Good afternoon, everyone. It's Kirsten here at Kirsten Foss Coaching for our Thursday Spa Business Break, where we're talking about your spa business, how to run it more efficiently, and how to be a better leader. So today is about how to be a better leader, and the topic has to do with conflict, and in particular client conflict. Now, I know that everyone in our industry, because we are a bunch of givers and feelers, we wouldn't have gotten into the spa industry if that's not the kind of person that we are. So the first piece of this conflict and client conflict has to do with the fact that most of us really aren't the types of personalities that deal with conflict well, because we are in the business of making people feel good. And so when conflict comes up, it causes a huge amount of stress. And when we're under that stress, on top of the other stress that we have while we're working in our business, it can kind of knock you on your butt. So it's really important that we are prepared for dealing with conflict in our business, because it's just going to happen. We're human. we mess up, clients mess up, staff mess up. We're also all coming to the spa with our own personal stuff going on. Clients are coming with their own personal stuff going on. So of course there is going to be conflict at some point. But here's the thing. You want to be prepared with how to deal with that conflict so that you aren't kind of thrown on your butt and feeling like you just had your kind of world just exploded for a moment and it takes a while to recover. You need to be way more efficient than that. Now, here's the fact of the matter with conflict with me. I hate conflict too. I hate it so much that at one point in my life, I was more willing to figure out how to deal with conflict and how to find a solution much faster and with much more intensity than I was willing to let my own personal triggers kind of hijack the issue. So some of this has to do with your own personal growth and just having that awareness about how you react with conflict. What is your go-to response? Do you get defensive? Do you shut down? Do you just give them whatever they want to make them happy? None of those are healthy solutions for you, for your business, for your boundaries. And so we need to figure out how to deal with conflict before we get into a situation that becomes a bit of a gong show. So, I really encourage you, when conflict comes up, to kind of put your mind into this mindset of, okay, I get this is a problem, but what's the actual problem? Because sometimes, whatever somebody's complaining about or whether what there's conflict about, a lot of times it's actually not the real issue. So my first go-to is always to try to keep myself calm. And that first little initial, I have a problem, I keep myself calm. But the first thing I go to is I start my critical thinking about what's actually the problem here. Okay, so how to deal with even the crankiest clients. The first piece is just kind of getting your own self to react from a non-triggered place and to react calmly and with grace. Now, with your, as far as a client coming to you has a problem, maybe isn't being very nice about it, if you are allowing your own stuff to come into conflict, or your team members, then a problem that could be easily resolved can easily go absolutely kaboom. So what we do to mitigate those issues, especially if we have a team, is that we need to create a system for dealing with conflict. Okay, so what does that system look like? Hey Shannon, I know you're with me on this. You hate conflict as much as I do. Okay, what does this conflict system look like? And in this case, I'm really talking about mostly about having a team, but it's also relevant if you are a solo. You just end up having this system that's kind of more in your head than it is written down and shared with other people. So the first thing you want to do if a client comes to you and they are cranky is you want to listen to them. One of the things I notice that happens a lot with conflict is that Sometimes a client just wants to be listened to. Sometimes, and I know that's not always fair, but we're not really talking about what's fair. We're talking about finding a solution, okay? I don't know if I've heard like a phrase, kind of a joke type of thing. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? It's the same kind of situation here. Do you want to be right as far as it's not fair, they're being unreasonable, or do you want to be happy as in not having conflict, having a client dealt with, honoring your own boundaries and supporting your own business, okay? So we first have to get through that initial, that ego wanting, that's not fair, it's not right. And moving into, all right, I'm willing to find a solution. And here's the thing about negotiating and conflict and stuff like this, is that, oftentimes both parties are walking away not completely happy. So, when there's conflict, there might be a little bit of give and take here. Okay, the first step is to listen, and really listen. Don't listen to wait till your turn to talk back at them, okay? Listen. Then you want to be listening and reading between the lines, because again, sometimes people don't know how to communicate clearly. We've all got our own personal ways of how we grew up with communication. Sometimes your clients don't know how to communicate clearly. And if they're upset and not feeling like they got the service that was promised, the product wasn't working as promised, and they get upset because they've spent a lot of money, maybe it was a little bit more money than they were comfortable spending, it can trigger some stuff inside them. So that's why not only listening is respectful to them and will help you at your next step in resolving it, but it will allow you to also see between the lines and read between the lines about there could be another issue going on here. When you're able to be in a calmer brain mindset and with that listening, you can solve a lot of issues really quickly, all right? Okay, second part of your system is that if you are the owner listening to this, then you need to look at what part of this problem is actually your responsibility. So are you lacking a system to make things consistent, and the client didn't get consistent service? Do you have a system, but you had a system breakdown, maybe with a team member? You need to own your part in this. A lot of times I'm seeing this one has to do with cancellation policies, and the cancellation policy is inconsistently being communicated. Yes, it's on your website, but if you're having problems with no-shows and that kind of thing, then you need to include your cancellation policy at the point of booking so that it's very clear about what the policies were. So if you don't have that policy in your online booking where they can see it clearly, if it's not being communicated when they're calling to book appointments, that is a bit of a ball drop on your end. So it's time to look at what you're responsible for and get back into it and create parts of those systems that will mitigate this problem so it doesn't happen again. Okay. The other thing that you want to create, especially if you have a team, is customer service scripts for conflict, because your reception, your aesthetics team, your massage therapy team should not have to deal with conflict. Yes, they will be the front line of it, but you need to arm them with a script on how to deal with it. But also there will be a point that you need to also give them permission and have a system for escalating it. A lot of times when our team members are not handling conflict well, it's because they're feeling like they have to deal with it with what they know, and they don't know enough, and they don't have enough permissions within the business to actually resolve it. So look at what that point would be and create a process so that your team is very clear about what they're capable of communicating and what they can do in a client conflict, but also that next step. If the client is still not happy, your team needs to have a script about, okay, I understand you're still not happy about this issue. It's best that I'm going to contact the owner, and she will get back to you within 24 hours, and you'll be able to I'll share with her what's been going on, but you'll be able to have a conversation with her. So that way your team has like something they can do that's productive, that's not saying no to the client, but is just saying, I don't have enough authorization to take this any further. So that the client's not just getting more pissed off and frustrated because, again, nothing's really been able to be happening because your team isn't armed with the right information. All right, so those are the tips I have for you to have dealing with client conflicts. So we need to listen. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Listen first. Again, a lot of times clients just want to be heard. And even agreed with to a certain point. Yes, I understand that you're unhappy and I can understand why you're unhappy and I would like to resolve this for you. Maybe you don't have time to resolve it right now. That's okay. Give them a timeline that you'll get back to them. But they often just want to be heard. When I see things going kaboom, it's because clients don't feel like they're being heard and they're getting increasingly frustrated. And that's when you get really crappy stuff like, snarky reviews, people bad talking about you and your business online. So we want to make sure you have a client conflict system in place so that you can mitigate that as much as possible. Yes, there's going to be a few crazies out there that are going to not be reasonable, but when you have these client conflict systems in place, you feel a lot more confident and your team feels a lot more confident about we've done what we can as far as conflict resolution and this person still isn't being reasonable. You can honestly say if they leave a post that's public about, the crappy service or blah, 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 then you can honestly go into that comment and make your own kind of rebuttal. We tried to connect with you, blah, blah, blah. You can communicate what you've tried to do so that publicly it's been very clear that you had a process, you did your best to resolve the issue, and client's still not being reasonable, all right? So we can't fix this all completely, but we can absolutely mitigate a lot of the issues just by thinking about how you want your client complaints processed. Right? It's just another system. And when we create a system, it takes all the charge out of it, the emotional charge out of it, so that we can be in our thinking brains rather than our reactive brains. And it's our thinking brains that will allow your team to respond and act appropriately how you want them to be. And the client will be able to handle this a lot better as well. If you have any questions about client conflict, about and this goes the same for staffing conflict. It's quite similar. It goes the same for family conflict. Nobody likes conflict. We all hate conflict. One of the best books I ever read, and if you've been following me for a while, I've been beating the drum about it for years and years. If you are needing a book to help you feel more confident about saying no, about when you want to say yes, and really it's all about boundaries. The best book I have ever read about it is William Urey's book called The Power of a Positive No. It has been my Bible for dealing with conflict for years now, and it works on clients, it works on staff, it works on husbands and wives, it works on kids. So it's a pretty awesome book. It's an easy read. So if you're struggling with your leadership in this particular area, I highly, highly suggest you grab that book off of Amazon or your local bookstore and dig in. It's not a very big book. You'll get through it really quickly. If you've read that book, let me know what you think. What's your biggest takeaway of The Power of the Positive No? My biggest takeaway was the fact that it gave me a format for how to say no, an empowered no. So that I wasn't feeling like I was saying no and being a horrible friend or horrible boss or not a good esthetician to my client. But my biggest takeaway was that quick little 3-step format about how to say an empowered no. An empowered no for me and an empowered no for the other person. And how to resolve conflict without throwing names, about, hacking on each other, all that nasty, gross stuff. We just want to avoid that as much as possible. We're grown-ups. As long as we remain calm, as long as we have a system for approaching conflict, we will be able to get through it, right? Right. Okay, thanks for watching me today on our spa business break, and I will be here next Thursday, 12 o'clock Pacific, talking about you and your business. See you then.